welcome to Getting Sassy with Google. Really appreciate everybody making some time to join us today. Excited to dig in on all things SaaS, Google Ads, and demand gen. Before we do, just a bit of housekeeping before we get everything kicked off. We've dedicated a really nice chunk of time at the end of today's sessions for Q&A after the presentation. So I will be monitoring chat very, very closely. So if you need something repeated, if you require clarification, please let me know. I'm happy to jump in and interrupt. Otherwise, I'll be keeping a close eye and a tally on all questions, and then we're going to dedicate a nice chunk of time to dig in on everything that was submitted at the end of today's presentation. So we have some great speakers lined up for you today. First up, we have David Hinchelwood, Google Agency Development Manager. A little bit of background on David. He has spent years working with Google partner agencies and helping them assist their clients at leveraging platforms and growing their businesses confidently. Prior to joining Google, he had successfully led and supported an online education program where he increased quarterly sales revenue by over 30%. David also has an MBA from Emory University and a BA from Harvard. Please welcome, everyone, David.
Thank you so much, Luke. A much warmer welcome than I deserve. Give me just a second to pull up the content that I'll be sharing today.
Absolutely.
All right. Luke, can you just confirm that you are able to see my screen?
Yep, perfect.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining today. And it is really a distinct pleasure to be able to come and co-present alongside of Direct Online Marketing. I will save the spiel about me since Luke essentially covered everything. Really, just what I want to highlight here is that I have had the distinct pleasure of working with Dom since the beginning of 2021. They are a premier Google partner and are in the top 3% of agencies program-wide. They, above probably any other agency I've had the pleasure of working with, are thought leaders in digital advertising. They are product experts, and they have truly been so incredible to work with. And so it was really a joy to be asked to be a part of this today. As you saw clearly from the title, I will be walking you through just a few high-level industry considerations and the consumer journey for software as a service. We'll look at some of the interesting Google products that are revolutionizing the industry. And finally, unfortunately, still top of mind for all of us, we will conclude with just a couple of top-line trends that we're seeing in the industry overall and the impacts specifically because of COVID. So just jumping right in for key industry considerations and just the overall consumer journey. I acknowledge this is a very text-heavy slide, but I did just want to begin with a little bit of context. I'm not going to read every single one of these facts aloud, but a few major things that I would like to call out just as we are grounding ourselves in the conversation today, just things that we're seeing in the overall industry, things that we are noticing from our Google internal data. So over 75% of B2B and software as a service buyers and sellers prefer digital self-serve and remote human engagement. Yet there is a clear untapped market in digital, with about only 25% of B2B and SaaS marketers using traditional PPC, and even fewer than that using services like video and display, despite video being an immensely large part of many buyers' journeys. Additionally, 58% of B2B and SaaS search queries are coming from outside of the United States, and that number is growing higher and faster year on year than what's happening in the United States. All of this and all of the other facts that you're seeing on the screen is really just to say that what you're going to see thematically throughout today is that the market is evolving. some of the current perceptions and practices about what may be working and what may not work may be a little outdated. And what's within the realm of possibility for you, direct online marketing and Google together, is absolutely infinite. So SaaS and B2B more largely is especially unique as an industry because 71% of researchers start with a generic search. In their overall research, Google is a vital initial tool, and most searchers are coming with brand agnostic mindset, and they're really looking to gather information. They're essentially sitting in front of their computer with maybe a product or a service in mind, and they may have some sort of consideration set of brands, but they truly are agnostic in what they are ultimately looking for and what will ultimately be the brand or the product or the service that they decide upon. And that is truly why, as we all know, search is Google's foundation. And that is truly because of this intent, because of that trend. You can reach people who are actively searching for your solution. In the software as a service industry, roughly 32% of searchers truly do not have a brand in mind. However, as they're driven even further down the funnel, other Google properties like display, discovery, YouTube, as well as strategies like remarketing can strengthen overall consideration and ensure that you remain top of mind as searchers dig even deeper and drive closer to making that final decision. Remembering the 71% number from the previous slide, even those 68% who may have had an initial brand in mind are perhaps more brand agnostic than in other verticals. Those searching on Google are coming to collect data, research solutions, and there are up to 12 searches being done with additional brands being gathered before most SaaS searchers begin to even deeply engage or dig even deeper with brands that they've added to their consideration set. And so that is something that is really, really important to keep in mind as a takeaway, is just even those who may have a brand in mind are not super convinced. But importantly, intent search is a very important part of the puzzle, but it is just one piece. As you can see from the slide here, on Google and across the web, only about 4% of the time is actually spent on search, and about 96% of the time is spent outside of search, with multiple different touch points across our suite of products, including Gmail, YouTube, and in some instances, even products like the interests feed and the Google Display Network. Search is a knock at the door, but oftentimes an invitation to dinner means taking an intentional omni-channel approach. With this context, let's jump into some SaaS industry-specific recommendations. For the next portion of my content, we'll begin with a high-level walkthrough of some of the most exciting products that we're seeing gain traction in the software as a service space in Google specifically, including value-based bidding, full funnel product expansion with YouTube and discovery, as well as a larger, very top of mind conversation around measurement and privacy and how it really should tie into your larger overall strategy. It absolutely makes sense that search is the bread and butter for what many SaaS marketers are doing in the digital space, given the tug in the industry where the majority of marketers want to increase lead quality simultaneously to increasing overall lead volume. The issue here becomes how. Do we funnel more money in at the same CPA or ROAS? Do we diversify our channels? How do we think about standing out in a market that is becoming more and more saturated by the day? One of the quickest and most effective ways to drive lead effectiveness at scale is data. Who would have thought that a data company like Google is going to come here and tell you that data is important? Data is digital. SaaS businesses that are able to integrate customer data from their websites, from their CRM, from anything happening offline and on other channels realize the dual cost saving and profit synergies that the industry craves and that really can set businesses apart. But at the same time, we do absolutely understand that data is sensitive, as it should be, but it is one of the absolute quickest and most immediate ways to really carve out a competitive advantage in the industry. The more data you're able to share, the better we can optimize towards goals that drive your business forward, get businesses using your service, and overall increase your new business acquisition and your existing customer lifetime value. Better measurement improves lead quality 20%. And Google solutions in the measurement realm are built to drive high quality leads. High quality, high volume, we are a leads focused business. For example, if you're looking to drive higher quality leads, importing offline conversions and using automated bidding strategies that bid toward the value of customers, like a targeted return on ad spend or maximizing conversion value, will help your campaigns optimize towards lower funnel conversion actions that qualify leads. Likewise, if lead volume is more important to you, implementing the global site tag and integrating offline conversions while using automated bidding strategies that bid towards the volume of customers like target CPA or max conversions will not only ensure that you are driving volume, but ensure that you are doing it intentionally and with data so that you can accurately measure lead volume across channels to allocate your resources smartly. These are just two quick examples and absolutely always happy to follow up, but I wanted to really spend some time and go through a couple of examples because these are the types of conversations that direct online marketing and Google are having daily, and something that has driven incredible customer success, even in the most saturated of industries. And I know as a voiceover, I touched upon automated bidding in my last slide, but fundamental to success of a campaign in the software as a service industry is not just measurement, but one step further, it is proper alignment between measurement, bidding strategies, and your marketing goals. The key takeaway here is that Google's automated solutions pick up millions of signals, millions of learnings from similar industries, from similar verticals, from times of day, from weather, from geography, from things that I can't even begin to articulate, as well as your own first-party data to ensure that no rock or amazing prospect is going unturned. Our strategies are vast, and you can target based on your specific goal. As top of funnel is something like visibility, or of course, in your industry, probably something much more exciting, something as low funnel as actual conversions or as revenue specific as you may like, whether that's targeting towards revenue or even going a step further and targeting to profit. Now, having gone through just a quick overview of measurement and how that relates specifically to search, I did want to quickly shift gears and talk about a couple of other products in the Google suite that we have found particularly effective in this industry, but that we are seeing as a currently untapped market. And that is discovery ads and video action campaigns. If you remember from one of those previous slides, 96% of time spent on Google is spent outside of search. And so it is important to add additional products to your consideration set. Folks are constantly switching between search, Gmail, YouTube, and a myriad of other properties during their research. And having this kind of cross-channel presence is critically important to ensure that your brand sticks out. So what is a discovery ad? Essentially, it's our social option. What discovery ads do is that they combine audience targeting features and visually engaging formats, here just a static image similar to something that you would use on Facebook, so that advertisers can better personalize their ads and inspire customer action. Discovery ad campaigns enable advertisers to deliver rich, personalized ad experiences to people who are truly ready to discover and engage with their brands, all through a single Google Ads campaign. It allows advertisers to specify media-rich campaigns that Google will use to deliver the right format at the right place for the customer with just a single static asset. It is a vastly untapped Google product as it stands now, and one that has had incredible success compared to its competitors, delivering higher value, higher volume, and at much lower CPMs. Likewise, video action campaigns are just the next generation of true view for action, and they are truly videos that are designed to drive lower funnel actions, such as website clicks and conversions. They're specifically optimized across multiple formats, from in-stream to home feed to watch next to connected TV, and many more products that are in the pipeline to be coming soon at the end of 2021 and 2022. Video action delivers improved performance at scale through one campaign type that runs and optimizes across all formats with smart bidding, either TCPA or maximize conversions. And essentially, in its simplest form, It is automation for video, optimizing towards your desired call to action with whatever your choice conversion, driving the ultimate lower funnel action. We've seen even in just this past year, they deliver about 20% higher conversions per dollar than any other lower funnel video tactic. And lastly, and perhaps most excitingly, across these two properties, there is a population and a total reach of nearly 3 billion people. And what's exciting about these two and why I chose to highlight them is that they are incredibly powerful together. When video and discovery are paired, we've seen a 2.7 times increase in favorability, a 2.2 times increase in consideration, and a 1.4 times increase in purchase intent compared to just using video alone. So if we think about that in context of having 96% of actions taken outside of search, if we think about how brand agnostic many of the researchers in this industry are, having this kind of omni-channel, multi-sensory approach is something that is critically important, especially as you are driving down the funnel when you really want to be the winner in that ultimate consideration set. As part of this two-tiered approach, discovery and video action essentially turn interest into measurable action because they find customers with the greatest intent based on your data and Google's nearly infinite signals. They inspire action with multi-sensory, specific and actionable creatives. And hearkening back to a few slides prior, they also allow measurement to understand their value, not just together, but also in how they uplift search intent, how they drive volume, and ultimately how these two products drive overall engagement with your brand. This is not supposed to be a Google roadshow. And so for the Google product specific portion of my content, I just want to end on this final note. And that is touching specifically upon audiences as the key to finding success across all of the Google platforms, not just the ones that we've talked about today, but truly all of the platforms, because what audiences do is they offer a level of personalization to reach the right companies at the right time with the right message. It's important to ask the right questions to find the right audience. What segment is driving profitability for us? Is it small and medium business? Is it mid-size? Is it enterprise? Do we want to go up market? Do we want to go down market? Do we have the right offerings for different verticals? Then using our newest audience features, combined audience, for example, you're able to create audience personas by combining different Google and first-party audience segments to create your ideal customer profile. And again, that is your ideal. It is one that is unique to your business, your profitability, and your segment to drive specific measurable results. For example, on the left side of the slide, if you're looking to target tech startups, say, you can combine a number of different optionalities here in market for payroll services, B2B detailed demographics for small employers, and B2B detailed demographics for the tech industry to ultimately create a combined audience that is so specific to your brand that you are essentially going to serve the highest quality ads to only the most relevant folks. And essentially that intersection is something that is incredibly priceless. This functionality works across all of our properties, and it is a great way to ensure you're delivering your content to the right audience at all times to, again, make the absolute most efficient use of your marketing dollars. All right, folks, we did it. I know that was enough and a lot of information, and that is the end of the Google product portion. As I mentioned, I will just briefly conclude with a few high-level trends of what we're seeing in the industry. These are high level, but intentionally span product, geography, and projection to ensure that we're capturing the full value of the industry, and hopefully a couple of gems that you may not have been aware of. So in all of our analyses that I'm going to present, we've looked not just at SaaS trends year over year, but also benchmarked to 2019. This will give us insight into how the industry is performing compared to during the heart of COVID and in the times that were quote unquote normal during the pre-pandemic before times. What's really positive here is that month over month, we're seeing positive growth in the SaaS technology searches across Google compared to both 2019 and 2020, suggesting that the industry is growing now more than ever before. Shifts in the landscape, more remote work, additional flexibility, increased technological need, or whatever the story may be, have all contributed to the growth in searches, and now is absolutely the time to capitalize on this continued growth and set yourself up for success in the future. Of note here, search volume is up year to date, 37% from 2019, and is projected to finish 2021 just as strong. Getting a little bit more granular, across some of the most highly searched SaaS products, you're also seeing a lot of green. It makes sense that there was a dip in something like collaboration software, given the quick pivot businesses needed to make during 2020. But across the board, the industry is growing, and it is important to note that it is not being overly weighted by growth in just one specific product area. Businesses are searching the gamut from sales and marketing to productivity to product management, and across the board, year-to-date growth is double digits for nearly every product focus area. And it's not just endemic to the United States. SaaS growth is truly a global phenomenon. According to Statista data, the US is, of course, the top market with about $100 billion in revenue in 2021, followed by China, which is about 10 billion in US revenue. But there is growth globally across Asia, Europe, and maybe even in some countries that are less expected, like Spanish-speaking Latin America. As we continue to work to find new and novel ways to reach highly qualified leads at similar costs, thinking globally will become even more important. Google has a number of services to ensure your well-performing ads can be seamlessly translated into relevant languages and to reach additional incremental customers and capitalize on these growth trends across the world. With that, thank you all so much for your time today. We've explored the macro world of SaaS, the micro world of Google products, and the exciting intersections that can bring them both together. In sum, the industry is evolving, and we are at a truly pivotal moment for SaaS companies to involve their strategies, work with great agencies like Dom, and capitalize on these insights. I hope this was insightful. And with that wisdom, I will conclude my portion. Thank you all again.
Awesome. Love it. David, omni-channel, multi-sensory, absolutely great stuff, my friend. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Next up, we have Justin Seibert. He is the founder and president of Direct Online Marketing. Justin is a 20-year veteran in the digital marketing space, and he started in this field in 2001 and was a one-man digital marketing department for an LA-based firm. In 2006, he founded us, Direct Online Marketing, and since then he's grown Direct Online Marketing into a top 200 premier Google partner, and he's worked and helped our agency assist clients in every populated continent around the globe. Please welcome everyone, Justin.
Awesome. Thanks, Luke. I appreciate that. And David, thank you so much. Really always appreciate all of your help, all of Google's help in joining us today. A lot of great product information. And then I really loved the stats that you shared at the end as well with kind of the global outlook, which is really great to see. And I want to start off today with some good news. We all need good news, right? And that is, especially for me, but back on October 15th, so just 2 weeks ago, I was actually giving my first presentation in person anywhere in the world, and that happened to be at Bologna, Italy. So we are starting to open back up. I'm hopeful that next year we can get back to in person and seeing people and doing so safely with everybody. The flip side was I had a presentation in Orlando on the 18th, and that was something that moved to webinar. But again, I think we're getting very close, and we had a really great experience there. Quick fun fact, we think of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Well, there's actually Leaning Towers in Bologna as well. Now, By law, I have to say who we are just very quickly, but I promise this is going to be about 30 seconds, and then we're going to get into the meat of the presentation. As Luke mentioned, we're Dom, Direct Online Marketing. Been in business for 15 years, and we really specialize in B2B. We do a ton of SaaS work, and all we're focused on is demand gen. How do we help our clients grow? We know there are a lot of pressures on our clients for that growth. We want to be that partner that can help them with that. I've personally been doing this, as Luke mentioned, for 20 years, and would love to connect with you on LinkedIn is probably the best place. Certainly can do so on Twitter as well. And then if you want to learn more about us, click on our website or go to our website at directom.com. All right, sales pitch out of the way. I want to start with what I think is a fundamental concept that I really want to get across. And that's our concept of how do we make your dollars work harder? And it sounds simplistic, and you say, why are you even starting with this, Justin, right? Obviously, we want to make our dollars work harder for us. But when you break it down, it's a little bit more complicated than that, because you have two different factors that go into that. And not only are they two different factors, they're competing factors. So on the first side, we look at how do we make our campaigns scale? How do we grow this as much as possible, right? You know, how do we back up that truck? How do we make sure we're getting as many dollars coming into our organization as possible? How do we get as many subscribers as possible to our software? But on the flip side of that, you also have to worry about how efficient you are with what you're doing. So if I said to you that I could get you leads at $1, a cost of $1 per lead, you'd say, I have an unlimited budget. Back it up. I'll take as many as I can get. But in other times, it might be a little bit more of a struggle to get there. And so we have to see, what can we do to balance that out? And that's a really hard thing, both, I think, to manage that and understand what the numbers are telling you. And it's a hard thing for your account managers as well, because they can sometimes, if you have just one goal, very specifically about a cost per acquisition, they'll start going towards that, and you can have your scale start to drop. You can have your volume start to drop. And it's really easy. You can go out of business by not getting enough sales because of that. On the flip side, if you loosen up and say, well, I just want to get as many leads as I want, cost per lead be damned, go out of business because you're not being profitable with what you're doing. So we really need to make sure that we understand this. We have everybody on the same page with what we're doing. And we'll come back to that, because it's more than just cost per lead. It's really, what is your cost per sale? What does your return on ad spend look like? But I want to spend a little bit more time on that in a future slide. The first thing that I want to share, we've done an entire webinar before on, does it make sense to do this in-house? Does this make sense to hire an outside agency? There's no clear answer. There's no right answer, one size fits all. It's what's unique, what fits your unique needs. And so happy to share information, help you make a decision on that, because not only do I not think that agencies are right for everybody, I don't even think that we're the right agency for everybody. It has to be a good fit. But as we're thinking through this, I want you to think about, if you are in this position of trying to figure out which direction you want to go, what are some things to keep in mind? And if you're on the in-house side of things, you're going to get a lot more hours work, because whoever you hire is going to be dedicated, the majority of the time, dedicated just to you. They're only going to be looking at what you're doing. They're going to be sleeping, eating, breathing this throughout the day. And they get instant access to them as well. So at any point where you have a question, it's not like you have to necessarily wait or get on a call in an environment where if you are in person or you're going back to in person at some point, it might be as simple as just walking down the hall. You also get subject matter expertise, because the person or the team is living, breathing this. They're surrounded by it every day. They have that depth of knowledge about the solutions that you're offering to your clients and who your clients are in a way that's harder for an outside organization to get. And then finally, you have more control. And I put control in quotes here because it's a little bit of an illusion of control, but you do have more control in that setting than you do when you're working with an outside partner. If we flip it over to the agency side of things, you get strategic expertise. They're doing this for lots of different clients. So they're seeing what works in different areas and can apply that to you. They also have more knowledge breadth. So they're able to dig in and know at a very deep level how to analyze, how to actually pull the levers on the account, how to build a strategy. You also get continuity. So if something happens and you have someone on your team that's responsible for something, they end up quitting, or you end up having to fire them for whatever reason, or they're just out on an extended leave, what are you going to do? Are you just waiting until that person comes back, or you're able to replace that person? With an agency, if they're large enough, they should have enough resources to be able to provide that continuity. So if their person leaves, they have somebody else stepping in to fill that in. Typically, an agency is also going to be less costly for you when you think about the costs associated with fielding a person or a team in-house. And then it's also easy to switch. So if the agency isn't working out, you feel a little bit less compulsion about making that change and going on to the next agency, especially if it's an agency like ours where we offer month-to-month contracts and don't tie anybody in. Now, if you are doing this in-house, I want you to think through what some of those needs are. And the first thing is, there are no unicorns in life when we're hiring. You've probably seen this already, right? You've probably experienced this already. So in an ideal world, you'd have a person that would be able to do a bunch of different activities. Ideally, they'd be able to do strategy. They'd be able to do analysis. They can pull those levers during the day-to-day account management. They can manage the project, and they're able to communicate everything with you. They may even have other skill sets like design, development, anything along those lines. If you're in a smaller situation where you just have one person doing this, it's very hard to do that. If you're a larger organization, you're able to have a full team, then it's a little bit easier to build. And when we think about what we do here, just as an example, all of our clients have a client success manager who handles communication and project management. Then they're working, and you're working with the account managers, the strategists, the analysts, the designers, the developers, all of those people that are dedicated to your account. So if you're building that team in-house, those are some of the positions you want to think about having. All right, with that out of the way, let's get into how do we measure success. And we want to talk about that on a couple different levels. In the first place is, where do we start, right? And you want to work backwards with everything that you're doing. So you start with your end goal in mind. So what is the ultimate return on your investment that you want to get? And then you can start backing that out into different goals like a cost per opportunity, a cost per lead, and focus on those areas, and less so worry about what an individual cost per click or what some of those other metrics are. Now, two important things we need to focus on. The first is return on ad spend. Ultimately, what are you getting? What's the juice you're getting out of this, right? That's really easy in an e-commerce situation. So when we are working with a retail client and they are doing e-commerce, we can see automatically, did this pay off? Are we getting more money than we're putting out there? Are we hitting our profit margins? As you know, in SaaS, we don't have that luxury necessarily, because we're just seeing that we have a lead. And in many cases, especially if you're offering an enterprise solution, it might not just be a 1, 2, or 3 month sales cycle for you. It might be a 1, 2, 3 year sales cycle for you. So it can take a really long time to measure that. And because of that, we then want to focus on cost per blank. And the reason I say blank, I alluded to this earlier, is we start with a cost per lead. That's the really easy thing to see. Did the person fill out a form? Did they pick up a phone call? Maybe did they fill out a live chat? Did they download a white paper? Whatever those things are that you're measuring, did they sign up for a webinar? So we start with that at the cost per lead level, but we really want to get deeper than that. And this is what David was talking about earlier in his presentation. So we want to start understanding, what is that cost per marketing qualified lead? What is it for sales qualified lead? What's it for our opportunity? And ultimately, what is it for closed won, so that we can truly measure how things are happening here. Now, not to get too far in the weeds, but I do want to pull out two technical things here to make sure that you're aware of. The first is that Google has a direct interface regarding getting data from your CRM back into Google Ads so that you can measure these things more easily. And you don't have to only measure them within those CRM platforms. And the reason you want to be able to do that is within the CRM platforms, you're probably not getting keyword. Maybe you're getting that. You're probably not getting ad though, or campaign, or all of these other variables that you want to look at. And if you have Salesforce specifically, Google has a direct interface with that where it can connect and import that data. If you don't have Salesforce, but you're using another CRM, great news. Google earlier this year announced a new partnership with Zapier. And so you're able to zap in information from a host of other CRMs and be able to bring that information in as well. Last thing I'll mention, kind of a poor man's version of that, what you'll see some companies do sometimes is they'll set an individual conversion value so that you can get a sense for what that down and dirty, what is that return on ad spend that you're getting in your account. I'll caution against that. Number one, it's difficult to really pinpoint that. Those numbers change over time a lot of times, where you get a little more clarity in the situation and your own business might change. And then number two, when those things do change, a lot of times we don't remember to go ahead and update the system with those as well. So if you don't, if Zapier is too much for you, if you don't have Salesforce, it feels like a big technical hurdle to overcome, that might be a solution for you. But we'd recommend, again, if you can get that direct information in, highly, highly, highly recommend that you do that. The other thing, and this is really important in terms of your communication with the account managers, whether that's in-house or on the agency team that you work with, is really making sure that you strike a balance, and you're doing that with ranges. All right. So you might start off and say, hey, if you can get us leads, assuming they're of certain quality, at $250 per lead, back the Brinks truck up. We have an unlimited ad budget for you. You can spend as much as you want. But in other cases, you might say, hey, we cannot, our model does not work if we're at anything more than $150 cost per lead. Just doesn't make sense for us, whatever the numbers end up being for you. Well, you're going to measure that differently. So you might say things like, hey, if we need to get 30 leads per week, absolutely have to hit that mark, and we can pay up to $400 per lead. Make sure you're giving all the parameters to the people managing the account so that they have that flexibility to pull things. Because again, too often I'll see account managers, and it's something we even guard against here at DOM. We'll see them get too focused on just one side of the equation because they're getting beat up about that side of the equation. So we need to step back and make sure that we're pulling something that is satisfying both objectives here. And on the communication side, really make sure that I like taking this back to a personal perspective, understanding what each side is looking for, what the motivations are. So if you're a project manager and you're working with a CMO, they're worried about what they're delivering to the board. And might be private equity based, and they're being really aggressive with what they're being charged with. It might be the business owner, or might be the president of the company, depending on the size of what they're just straight looking at the numbers. If you're working with a project manager or the digital marketing manager, there might be judged more on smaller metrics, individual metrics in the account, and ultimately what's making them look good. We all want to look good, right? And that goes for both sides. So make sure you understand what the other side, where they're coming from, and what their objectives are. And if you're on the side where you're in that CMO or your director of demand gen or VP in those positions, make sure you educate yourself enough to understand how things work so that you get the full picture of what's actually possible. And I actually think, speaking for us from an agency perspective, it's on us. Onus is on us to share that information because you're busy. You have a lot of things going on. But again, get both sides communicating so you can see what's actually possible to do. And I'd recommend that whatever you do, ask questions. If you're on that side of being higher up, not pulling the leverage yourself, you don't want that person that's acting like the great and powerful Oz that's behind the curtain, just saying, hey, trust me, I'm smart. Ask questions, understand everything, because it's that collaboration, that partnership back and forth that's going to get you the best results. Now, what are some of the things that you want to track as a CMO? I'm going to list just 4 of those things out. Return on ad spend, we talked about, the cost per lead, cost per opportunity, total volume. The 4th one I want to mention is auction insights. This is one of my favorite tools that Google gives you. So you can actually pull and see who's competing with you in your space. So in this case, this is real data from one of our clients. And you can see that Capterra is coming in hard, Domo's coming in hot, and so on. And you can see how often are they advertising on the same keywords and how often are they appearing above you in those keywords. So all this data directly in your account that you can access. Make sure you're getting reports about this. If you're more on the project or the account management side of things, you want to look at those same metrics that we talked about, but you also do need to understand the cost per click, the quality score that impacts how much you have to pay for those clicks, And then also looking at impression share as well. Now, the last thing that I want to mention is making sure that you're breaking those things down by buckets. So I highly, highly, highly recommend that you have goals that are based on branded search, non-branded search, retargeting. They should all look very different. You're running a video campaign like David talked about. Those should have separate metrics that you're measuring towards. Strategy and execution side of things. And this is the last section we'll get into. So the benefit of Google, like we've talked about, historically, David laid out a great history of Google. It's about intent. You're reaching people that are actively searching for what you offer. But Google's so much more than that. And David talked about some of these things. Talked about retargeting. How do we follow up with those people that visited us or perform certain actions on our site? Customer match. We're uploading email addresses that we have for our newsletter list or for our clients or for our prospects. Discovery ads. We're going to talk more about that. David mentioned it. I'm a huge, huge proponent. We're going to show you actual stats so you understand why I care so much about these. Prospecting through display. Two big ones we've had a lot of success with are in-market, where you're reaching people who are actively shopping for something, and custom intent, where you can reach people who have searched for things in the past, or they visited sites like yours, like your competitors, like other industry sites. And then I'll just mention Google has other things as well that are a little bit less relevant typically in a SaaS situation, but occasionally might be used where you can run ads locally, you can run them on shopping, even more. Now, some stats I'm going to skip through very quickly because David already shared some great stats about what's going on in a post-COVID world, but we're seeing that the buying decisions are happening in front of even more people. So we want to reach as many of those people as before. We're also seeing that people are collaborating more, and they're collaborating across functions. And ultimately, we're getting a lot of IT people having that big influence on the buying decision. And so Google tends to be the leader in everything that they do, and you end up seeing copycats. There's one thing that Google made a really smart pivot towards, where they're hearing from some of their customers that, hey, Google, we love what you're doing, but we struggle sometimes because we really focus on enterprise customers. And we're getting leads, but they're from smaller companies. They don't really help us out a lot. And so Google came up with this concept called detailed demographics. And with that, you can reach people based on the company size, based on the industry sector. There's a few sectors, IT obviously being a big one that you might want to target. But if you're focused in the real estate space or healthcare space, finance, you can reach people in those places as well. And then even things like educational attainment as well. So if you are looking for professional information, there is a way that you can marry that into your Google Ads efforts. Now, big fan of machine learning. I will tell you that Google's been working on this. They've been cooking this up for 20 years now. It's finally gotten to the point that it can have a real impact for you. And so Google, if you leverage those tools that it offers, it can help you with bid strategies like David was talking about. Whether you want to maximize the number of conversions you're getting or go for a certain CPA or a certain ROAS, these are all ways that you can set up your account for targeting. You can also let Google go after the right audiences, characteristics you would have never thought of on your own. And you can even put those into observations so you can see who are the people we're really trying to reach. And then like David said, you can take that information to other efforts as well. Quick data points. This is actual data we pulled from one of our clients. This is over the course of a quarter. And this is why we don't want to focus just on cost per lead, because you can see you actually have leads turning into marketing qualified leads at varying rates, depending on, is this a branded ad? Is it non-branded? Is it discovery? All can vary a little bit. And these are, again, just one client. You're going to find out what actually works for you. But David brought up discovery. I want to spend just a second on that. And I think it's important to look at this. Why do I care about cost per lead? Why do I care about cost per other things? Well, display, if you looked at the last screen, actually had a lower percentage of people moving over into marketing qualified lead. But look at the difference in cost per acquisition that you see here. Because the cost per acquisition is so much lower, it's a third of what it was in search. It's a tenth of what it was in display. That you can actually have a smaller percentage making it over to MQL and have this pay off for you. Other things that you might want to look at, we're happy to talk through lead form extensions in search. You can also do lead form ads where the person can fill out information directly within a YouTube ad. So a lot of great ways that you can target people even more for direct action than ever before in Google. General best practices, just want to talk about a few of these very quickly before we get to the Q&A section. Site speed. I cannot stress enough how important site speed is. You need to be lightning McQueen with everything that you're doing. And because I was just in Italy, I can't help but bring up Luigi and Guido as well. When you look at data, it'll show you that having even a second lower that your landing page, that your site takes to load, can decrease your conversion rates by a third. So there's a lot of great stats out there, happy to share those, but nothing impacts conversion rates that you have control over quite as much as your site speed does. Go global. David laid out some really great stats for you. Personally, it's my favorite thing to do. We love running campaigns globally for our clients, running them in different markets. We have a ton of experience with this, but if software does work and you're able to open up to new markets, definitely it's a great way to do that with Google. Make sure that you're creative, your messaging matches your landing pages. And then the big thing that we always stress is it's really easy to become complacent and been working on an account for a long time. So make sure you have scheduled experimentation in everything that you're doing on a regular basis. Now, finally, before we get into the Q&A section, I just have one ask for everybody. We've all been both people in this picture here before. And I love being the person up top, right? I love being able to help other people out, lend that hand. But we've all been on the other side too, which is the less comfortable side to be in. And I think back to my time, especially when I started an agency, this agency, I thought I had to know it all. I had to know the answers. And I was embarrassed when I didn't know the answers about whatever it was. And there was no reason for me to know that. And I could have moved the agency a lot faster, a lot further, had I not been so embarrassed and had I reached out for help. So my one ask is that please be generous with giving and receiving help as well. So be generous to yourself. With that, the last thing I'll mention is that we do have a free offer. If you are interested in learning more, getting a free review of your account, learning at very specific levels what you can do to improve performance, please go to directom.com/offer. We're happy to follow up with you. Luke will have a conversation with you. I will follow up then and actually deliver the results that our strategists have put together. So happy to provide that to anybody that would like so. And with that, Luke, I will turn it back over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Justin. Powerful stuff, as always. And I really appreciate you sharing that today. Tons of great feedback and useful stuff. And we've got a ton of questions. So I encourage you, please, we've carved out the time, so continue to fire them through. I think at this point, we're all too familiar with how Zoom works, but in the off chance that you're not, there is a Q&A button down there. Please smash it and give us your questions. We love it. Keep them coming. And as you do, I'm going to start firing a few of them off to both of our speakers. Some of these are aimed at both of you. So I'm going to start out, and I think we can maybe kick things off with David and see what his feedback is, and then flip things to Justin afterwards, if that works. This is a great one. What are some challenges that come with SaaS B2B lead gen? And, you know, as a follow-up to that, sort of, what do you suggest in terms of maybe around those specific challenges, how to approach overcoming them?
Hey, David, I'm sorry. I didn't know if you wanted to take that first or if you want me to take a crack at that.
Yeah, sorry. If you want to go ahead first, I am very quickly troubleshooting my slow internet after the magical doorbell debacle of.
I totally get that. I appreciate that. It's a good question. You know, for me, there's a lot of opportunity, which means a lot of pitfalls as well. The biggest challenge that we see, the single largest challenge that we see, is not having a firm grip on the numbers and not getting full data tracking into everything. So we're often coming into a situation that maybe Salesforce is set up, maybe Marketo is set up, maybe HubSpot set up, but the data isn't being tracked correctly, or it's not coming through, or they're not talking to one another. So it becomes really hard to understand what the actual performance of an account is. So it makes it hard for us to manage. It makes it hard for our clients to see the value of whatever spend is there. So I think always starting with that first piece of getting as much clarity. The holy grail of attribution is that you're never going to see 100% of everything, but you ought to be able to get to 85%. You ought to be able to get to 90% of it. And so make sure you see that, and make sure that you also see the attribution of the whole funnel. So for example, if you're running video ads, how's that impacting your branded search? Are those people watching that and then converting on a different channel, like what David was talking about in his whole thing? I think sometimes we look at only last click attribution, and we're missing out on really what's having a big influence on that lead gen.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that makes sense, and definitely reflects a lot of the conversations that I know you have, and sometimes I have as well, around really connecting that data in a way that makes sense and tracking it. So I think that's awesome feedback. Thank you very much. The next one here, fire up a flare if you're still trying to fix things, David, but I've got another one specifically for you here, and it's around sort of Google and how they can sort of help continue to nurture leads once they are within a pipeline.
That is a great question. So obviously, a lot of the conversation that we've had today beyond search, we looked very lower funnel. But honestly, one of the big ways is just the variety and vastness of the Google suite of products. Essentially, one of the things that we're able to do, obviously not only beyond whatever analytics we're able to provide, whatever sorts of account optimizations we're able to provide, we're really able to come in and consult on what other products may make sense to drive leads down the funnel. So obviously YouTube has a full funnel suite of products. And so it's not just video action. Discovery we can use for either mid-funnel, lower funnel with the introduction of lead forms. And so I think really, obviously beyond just the actual work that you're doing and the campaigns that you're putting out, really that consultative approach where once we're able to see what's performing, what sorts of results you're getting, coming in and saying, well, have you thought about changing your strategy, adding this product, maybe switching some of your spend here or going to this bidding model, basically just having that 30,000 foot view of what other things you could be doing just to take a more holistic approach because of just the vastness of our suite of products is obviously something that is a great benefit.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I think that makes a ton of sense. And yeah, and I love that concept of, like you said, not thinking about just getting things in the pipeline, but once they're in there, how can we continue to take that omni-channel approach and nurture and grow them? So I love that. This next question that we have here is for Justin specifically. You had touched on this, and I didn't know if you wanted to expound a bit, but maybe there was just some clarification needed, and I missed this. But you talked a little bit about sort of some key metrics that you like to focus on, specifically when you're talking to C-suite executives. And this is sort of, I guess, a little bit of a clarifying question around that, specifically pertaining to ROAS. And sort of some additional feedback you might have around how to communicate that effectively and simply and impactfully to that C-suite level of executive, specifically for ROAS. You're muted, my friend.
Dude, I was so pumped up I couldn't even bother myself to hit the unmute button. It's a challenge in SaaS, right? Because of how long the sales cycles are. I think where you want to start is you have to start by making some reasonable assumptions. So historically, if you know that opportunities close at an X% rate, then you know that your average ARR value or your MRR value on that is X. You can start putting in those factors to calculate out against what you can see moving from lead to MQL to SAL in a quicker period of time than you otherwise would. And then over time, you need to validate those assumptions, because you might see that Google converts at a higher rate or a lower rate, or other variations. There are larger orders, smaller orders, fewer seats, more seats, and you can validate over time. But in the beginning, I would start with those assumptions so that you can pull that back in and show in a really easy manner, one slide to the C-suite of this is the impact that we believe we're having, what's driving pipe right now, and they should understand that, and then what we expect that to be based on the other, historical performance in other channels.
Nice. Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense too, and definitely jives with some of those types of conversations that I've had. So awesome, very cool. So I've got a two-parter here as well. I think that you're both gonna add a ton of value to this question, and I really, really like it. So if it's okay, not to fire shots, but David, you're up first on this, and I'm just curious kind of what your feedback is. The question is, before we start running ads to generate more leads, what things should we consider first?
That is a great question. So with as general as the question is, I will start with a general answer. So one of the things that I always bring into conversations, especially for folks that may be new to Google Ads, they may be new to an agency, they may be new even to dipping their toes into digital, is to have a really clear idea of what success looks like. Is it getting a certain lead volume? Is it driving a certain amount of profit or a certain ROAS from essentially what you're taking on? Is it essentially shifting dollars from something that may already be working to prove out a concept? And so for me, one of the most valuable initial conversations before you even dump a single dollar into a Google Ads platform is, what are the expectations? What are your goals? Because then someone like Justin, someone like myself can go and look at all of the data at our disposal, all of the clients that we've worked at, and we can come in and say, this is absolutely a achievable goal. This is something that you may need to tailor your expectations to. And from there, we can have a much deeper conversation about what kind of success is achievable, so that we can level set expectations in a way that we can actually drive a result and ensure that you're getting performance that you're still happy with.
Yeah, David, I love that. I think that's step one for sure. Other things that I would look at, just right off quickly, because I know we're close to time. But number one, making sure that you have good content and good assets, so that what can we do to add to the credibility of the company when they come in? What are those things that we want to get them to raise their hand about? What can we do to help support their buying journey? Number two, have a really good your CRM plan in place and your drip campaigns in place and all those things, so that post lead sign up, you can help move those through the funnel. And that can also include, coaching and working with the BDRs. How do you want to talk to this individual person? How does that look different if it's a webinar versus a white paper sign up versus a demo request versus, whatever those different things are. So I think some of those general best practices of prepping for, okay, we got the sign up. Now what are we going to do with it, so that you're really maximizing your dollars, is something you want to think through.
Awesome. Wonderful. Love it. And thank you so much. And I know we're very close to time today. I want to be respectful of everyone. So you both did an amazing job, and you managed to knock out other questions that I had in the chamber as part of those answers, which is amazing. So well done to you both. And I will hand it back to you, Justin, to take us home. Thank you.
Cool. Luke, thank you so much. David, thank you so much. We know you have a lot going on. It was wonderful of you to come personally. It was wonderful of you to come and represent Google. And we really, truly, truly appreciate your partnership. So thank you very much. And thank you to everybody for joining us today. If you have any questions, please reach out. We'd love to help you out. And if not, we'd love to just connect and follow along.